Welcome to the Business Bravery podcast, inspiring stories from coaches and course creators to help you do the next brave thing in your business. Coming up on the Business Bravery podcast, I'm your host, Tiffany Gilliland, an Australian business and mindset coach with 10 years experience in online marketing and the creator of the Business Bravery framework. I help coaches like you to be brave so you can stop dreaming and start doing that next big brave step and finally make more impact and get more clients. From speaking on camera to selling to launching, my approach to bravery helps you take bigger leaps without the mindset spirals. It's the secret ingredient to bigger results. In this episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing Paula James, a movement specialist who does amazing things for people like me with chronic pain, illness, and who can't just go to the gym for a variety of reasons. At age 20, Paula James bought a one-way ticket from Detroit, Michigan to Taipei, Taiwan. She taught English and played music on street corners and improved her fluency in Chinese. While there, a vehicle accident resulted in 10 years of back and neck pain. Traditional medicine didn't help. What did? A specific yoga practice and the Feldenkrais Method. Paula started training in physical movement and the power of alignment. For 20 years, she has been bringing patience, play, and skillful support to individuals facing pain and chronic fatigue. Small, gentle movement explorations can open up new possibilities in your life. This episode is particularly meaningful to me as someone who manages chronic pain and who has done so for decades, as well as having worked with Paula as both coach and as a client. With that said, this is an amazing episode and I can't wait to share with you Paula's stories of business bravery, past, present, and future. Now, who's ready for some business bravery inspiration? Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. I am here today with the amazing Paula James, who I'm just very excited to have on the podcast today because she is someone who like we've worked together. She has been my client. I have been her client in the health coaching space, and she has just a very unique perspective and unique approach that's so helpful for people like myself with chronic conditions who can't maybe get to the gym and do all of the things because it can spike issues and things like that. I'll let her tell all that. I shouldn't be putting words into her mouth. I try not to, but I get very excited. And so Paula, thank you so much for joining us today on the Business Bravery podcast. Tell us about your business in your own words rather than me trying to put words into it, and what brave things are you doing right now?
Thank you, Tiff. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. So I'm a movement specialist, and I got into all this work because I was in an accident that left me with 10 years of low back and neck pain. And so my real enthusiasm is helping people bridge from that place of, oh, there are things that I used to be able to do and can't right now, or that I'd like to be able to do that aren't available, or that used to be easy for me and now feel like I might get hurt if I try them. So I want to help find what are the small steps that would help you get from that place of, oh, I'm managing a lot of pain every day, or any amount of pain that's happening every day I know how wearing that can be, but to where you're able, what I would love for my clients is to get them to that place of, you're just able to say yes to invitations and opportunities, and you don't have to think about, is it going to be too much? How am I going to manage? What cushions do I need to take? Right. But to just be able to kind of take for granted, oh, yes, I would enjoy that. Right. And so that's not necessarily running marathons or doing extreme things, but, to be able to say yes to a lunch invitation without wondering if the chairs at the restaurant will give you back spasms, or to say yes to bike riding, or, to be able to choose flowers that you'd like to plant in the spring with some confidence that you'll be able to manage, your own garden.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just that confidence to be able to do those things in your life that you enjoy. Like, I know for myself, for the longest time, like so many of those things just felt completely off limits to me. And like, my body was broken, therefore I couldn't do those things, or, that just didn't work for me. And it's like, oh, it'd be nice if you were like that. But yeah, it's so nice, like from my own perspective of working with you and just being able to get back into doing more of those things and being able to manage those things for sure. And I imagine it must be like that for your clients as well. Yeah.
And it's small things that can make such a big difference, right? I recently taught a Love Your Hips workshop, and I just had a post in the Facebook group today from someone who said, oh, I followed the tips that you gave in the workshop, and for the first time I woke up and I didn't have any pain in my hips. And so, sometimes it's even that, which is to be able to sleep and get rest, because you're not in pain while you sleep, or you're not waking up in more pain than you were in when you went to bed at night.
Mm. Oh yeah, absolutely. That whole waking up in pain is kind of a horrible feeling. And yeah, and it's interesting how we can end up becoming used to certain types of pain, if you know what I mean. It's just like sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, this is how my life is. And then all of a sudden, like, we can meet someone like yourself and discover actually, there might be some other ways and other ways that aren't off limits, which I think that's amazing. I love the work that
And
you do.
when I tell people that I work with a lot of folks that have chronic pain issues, I think people are afraid, right? Like there was just going deep right away. Uh,
Love it.
I think we're pretty fragile, right? Like everybody is just one accident, one illness away from needing a cane or a wheelchair or help. And sometimes we can go lots of years and really enjoy moving around and being in our bodies. But I think for some people, the realization that, oh, that could happen to me is a hard one. And so then they push it away, but they also push away the person who's having the experience of the pain. And I think that the mental gymnastics going on are, well, I'm fine because I'm good and I do all the right things. And if you're having trouble, it must be because you're not as good or you're not doing all the right things. And so I don't want to get too close to you because I might catch some of your not goodness, and then I could have trouble in my life too, which is all crazy, right? Like so my story is I was 21 years old. I was living in a foreign country. I was out of college. I was working. Everything was great, right? I was on top of the world. And I was waiting for the bus to go home from work. It was it was in the winter, and it was just sort of a damp, drizzly evening. So I was waiting, and the street lights were coming on. Like it was just, everything was getting dark, and I was going home. It was the end of a good day. And I got on the bus and I walked back and sat on the seats right behind the second door of the bus, because it was up nice and high so I could look out and see the city as I went home. There was a bar in front of that seat, but no metal plate underneath the bar, right? Which is what's usual. And so everything was fine until the bus driver stopped suddenly. And then I slid off the seat under the bar and down those wet, grimy steps. And like I had the whole experience in a moment, right? Like, thank God I didn't hit my head on the bar. That, like, things could have been terrible, but I just went right underneath it. And it took me a moment to realize even where I was, what had happened. And I could see the other people on the bus looking at me. And I could see the bus driver look at me through the rearview mirror. Nobody asked if I was all right or I needed any help. So I had that moment of feeling like I'm seen and I'm all alone.
Wow.
And I think a lot of other folks with chronic pain have that, like it's sort of an invisible illness. And so then people don't necessarily know if I'm having a good day or a bad day, or how hard is a hard day. So I got myself up and went back to my seat. And when I arrived at my stop, right, it totally changed the evening for me. I got to my stop and I stepped out, and it was that wet, cold evening, and I could just feel my muscles clench up, and I had low back and neck pain for the next 10 years. And I tried all sorts of doctors and chiropractors and massage, acupuncture. Like you can spend a lot of money and a lot of time. And I did. And I still hurt all the time. And it wasn't until I started working with my body and moving differently that I came out of pain. It wasn't an outside expert fixing me. It was me relating to my own physical self differently. And the two things that really helped make that transition for me were yoga and the Feldenkrais method. And the yoga really helped give my body a way to work together as a team. Like here we need to all come together, and it was a balance of strength and flexibility and arriving to stand on one foot. And the Feldenkrais method helped me really unwind some of those quirky tension patterns that I had been running for so long, so that my brain and body could communicate better with each other, and I could have some different options so that I wasn't sort of stuck in a rut of implementing the same habits over and over again. And so that wasn't me doing anything bad. That was just, something suddenly happened in a moment, and my life changed direction. And now I tell you, I get on a subway or a bus or anything, and I make sure there's something in front of me, because if I don't, my alarm system is up, and I can't rest comfortably in that seat. So I am alert now to that as a possibility. But so when I look at people, the other thing I want to say about this too is that I love the work that I do now. I love connecting with other people around these vulnerable places. So like the social masks come down pretty quickly with pain, because pain is real. And also a lot of the work that I do is asking people to do things that are outside of their habits. And so who are you when you're a little confused, or when you don't quite understand how to follow the instructions, right? So I get to meet people there, which is a really nice place to be. So going back to where I was before, when I have a conversation at a networking event, anything, and say that I work with people in chronic pain, a lot of folks think that that must be very depressing. And it's actually the exact opposite, because very often I get to be part of that moment when things turn around, right? Like, oh, let's figure out what would be some steps that get you into a new chapter of being able to do things again. I actually don't regret getting on that bus or sitting in that seat or the accident, because I don't know how else I would have gotten into the work that I'm doing now. And I feel like I'm really where I belong. And I wasn't headed here before. So I also have that perspective then when I'm working with people of, oh, what could be next for you, right? Like, I understand this was not a fun door to go through, and let's make sure you don't get stuck in the doorway. But what is possible for you in your next chapter? What has this made possible? And what more could you be doing? So I find the work really exciting. I get to connect with people. I get to be part of things turning around in a more uplifting way. And I get to see folks have their lives open up again, often in some new directions where they had not anticipated before.
Man, sorry, just that's so powerful, like what possibilities are open for you now. And I mean, for people listening, like regardless of whether you have chronic pain or don't have chronic pain, that's such a powerful thing. But with the chronic pain, like I know at one point with my chronic pain, my leg pain was so bad that I wasn't able to walk more than like 20 steps a day, and the painkillers were just taking the edge off, and I was not a happy chappy for like a good few months, like better part of a year. And I was in my 20s, and I was just like, this isn't life. And it's just, I'm so glad like I found solutions and everything, and the solutions were surprisingly simple for that ailment. However, like it's still an ongoing thing of management, but just that whole tapping into possibilities and things like that. And I mean, like I since met someone who in my photography circles, she had sort of constant head pain, and she had things with her spine and back and everything. She had 1 hour a day without pain. And in that 1 hour, she would create these amazing photographs. She'd go out, she'd take photos, and her husband would help and edit and things like that. And it just sort of like, yeah, it's like even sometimes in the darkest situations, there's still possibilities, and there's still bravery in that, being able to step into those possibilities. So,
Well, and it was
yeah.
it was in that dark time too that I actually set the intention of, well, 10 years is a long time, right? And so it was in that I set the intention of, okay, if I have to go through this, I want to map the territory and come out of it able to be useful to other people, right? Like, this isn't just about me getting out. This is about me getting acquainted with how difficult this can be. And so I want to get the skills that will let me not just help myself, but let me be useful to other people. And so as soon as I was out of pain, I quit my day job, which was teaching high school, and went off to yoga teacher training. And within a few months of coming out of yoga teacher training, I was in Feldenkrais Method training, and I was teaching right away. So I just launched straight into, all right, what do I need to know to be able to teach? And then what do I need to know? What skills do I need to develop to be able to teach really well, so that I can actually help people create this kind of transformation.
Oh, wow. So just quickly, in a few words, and I apologize if I'm supposed to know this already since I've worked with you as your client, the Feldenkrais method, what is that? Sorry.
Yeah, wonderful. So it's named after the man who created it, Moshe Feldenkrais. And he was a soccer player when he was a young man, and injured his knee, and it never really healed. And this was a while ago, right? So I don't remember the years, but he was an adult studying physics and engineering in Paris, France, before World War II. So we're talking a little while ago. He had been a soccer player in Israel, and then when he was going on for advanced study, he was in France. And then during World War II, he was working with the Royal Navy out on boats, and that constant movement of the boat re-aggravated the knee trouble. He lived in a 4th floor walk-up, so having knee trouble and not being able to manage stairs was not an option. He went to the doctors, and they said, right, we'll do surgery. And there's a 50% chance he'll be fine, and a 50% chance he'll walk with a cane for the rest of your life. Now, he was one of the first Europeans to get a black belt in judo, so he was used to, being able to be very physical, and used to very skillful movements, being very physical. And he said, well, 50-50 is like tossing a coin. You don't know anything. And so he refused the surgery. His wife was a pediatrician, and he started studying her anatomy books and looking at how young children learn to move. And then he began working with himself, doing some movements, doing some imagining of how he would need to move, until he got to where he was able to move around quite well in his days without the knee pain. Now, that was kind of a long answer, and I'm sorry if that's not what you were looking for. The shorter answer is that the Feldenkrais method, one of the things that's important about it is helping improve communication between the brain and the body, really looking at that neuroplasticity, the neural networks. And so often asking yourself to do things that are unfamiliar, because when you're running your habits, you're probably using, the neural networks that are already those grooves are pretty deep. And you're not using other parts of yourself or other movement patterns that could be very useful. So the Feldenkrais method frequently will give you a constraint. Okay, can you keep this part of the body still while you move something else? Which actually is another fabulous training for people with limitations in their life, because then the question is, in class, it's voluntary, right? I give you this limitation, don't move this and do this, or keep your hips on the floor. How far can you turn your shoulders? So here's a constraint. Everything that's not expressly forbidden is permitted, but you have to observe the constraint. And so then when you have a constraint, like, well, I have 1 hour a day that's pain-free, or I can only walk 20 steps, you start looking at, what can I do in the context of this constraint? How creatively can I move around? How creatively can I use my life? In the movement classes, what happens then is the brain begins to remember, oh, there are other parts. One way I've heard this described is, if you imagine that your motor cortex has a map of every cell in your body, as babies, that map is not filled in yet, right? Babies are really good with the tongue and the lips. And then as they start touching things, and which is one of the reasons everything goes in the mouth, right? Because that's a place where they can actually get information about it. If a child plays piano, they're going to develop all the fingers on both hands. If they don't play piano and they do play soccer, they're going to map the feet really well, and probably the dominant hand, maybe not so much the non-dominant hand. So it's how you use yourself fills in that map. But then you could have habits that limit how much you move. You might have an injury. It could be almost as though somebody spilled coffee on the map, and then you sort of forget how to reach some of those places in yourself. So there are hands-on lessons where someone comes to a practitioner, often lies down on a table, keeping their clothes on, and then the practitioner moves them around to help the brain remember different places. But there are also group classes that look very much like a yoga class or other kinds of things. One person teaching a room full of people following directions. And, the directions here, if we do something very simple, right? If you keep your eyes looking forward and then just turn your head right and left, that's going to have you using your eye and neck muscles differently, because usually your eyes look and your neck helps your eyes see what they want to see. These can cause a little bit of dizziness. So if that happens for you or any of the listeners, you're welcome to close your eyes. I'll keep mine open so you can see what I'm doing. You could also keep your nose still and now shift your eyes right and left. And how much concentration does it take to move your eyes without moving your head? And are you still breathing when you do something that weird? For a lot of people, that'll be a no. Those are some of the earliest movements you get as a baby, right? You hear something interesting, your eyes go to that thing, and then you turn your head. And so asking the eyes and the neck to do something non-habitual and not together is going to make you have to talk to them individually, not send out like a group email, but okay, I want you to do one thing and you to do something else. And so it just improves the sophistication level, the quality of those communication loops. One of my students years ago, we were playing around with different patterns. And at the end of class, she said, I never knew I had so many moving parts.
Wow. Yeah. Sorry.
It's a process of discovery of what's possible. And it's also a process of discovery of, well, how do you find those parts? How do you communicate? And a lot of experimenting with variations, which allows you to begin to evaluate, oh, when I do it this way, I'm holding my breath and I'm tense. When I do it this way, I have a bigger range of motion. So you can start to compare.
Oh, wow. Okay. Such amazing stuff. I am conscious though that I usually ask about bravery stuff. So I just want to shift into that for a minute, because I could talk about this stuff all day. Tell me, what brave things are you doing in your business at the moment?
I want to go back, and excuse me if I'm messing up your order. When I was a kid, one of my favorite things is that our backyard opened out onto the elementary school playground. And so I got to spend a lot of time on the playground because it was right there. And my mom could see quite a bit of it from the kitchen window. So I was very lightly supervised. And one of my favorite things was to swing really high and then jump off. And I just loved everything about that. I loved the, pumping to swing and choosing the moment and then landing and feeling the ground. And in a lot of things that I've done in my life, I have really, what I appreciate about my dad and my parents is that they allowed me to make my own choices, right? To choose my own level of risk. Like we couldn't play like that during school recess because the teachers wouldn't allow it, because, you could clobber any kid walking by. Surprise, somebody just launched. But I had afternoons and weekends and summers to play around out there. And when I was in college, I had an opportunity to do a study abroad, and it was all organized by the school, and all the Americans would be in one dormitory together and all that. And I was like, no, what I really want is to swing high and jump off, right? I want to land on my own feet. So instead of that, I looked at my credit hours and I graduated a year early. So I got done in 3 years. I bought a one-way ticket to Taipei, Taiwan. And when I got there, I found work teaching English and playing music on street corners. And it was just that, like, that was much more satisfying for me to do that than to go be part of a program where I'd be, which my parents would have loved because they would have felt like I was safer. And so I think in a lot of ways in my life, the thing that's much more satisfying is to choose your moment and launch, and then find a way to land on your own feet. Instead, I think that the really small, there are small steps that need to be taken, right, to prepare. But if it's too small, if it's too the same, I think my own nervous system doesn't quite wake up and pay attention or get excited about it. It was, of course, a big jump for me to start going online because I had only been teaching in-person classes before that. Initially, I'd been teaching local in-person classes to groups of maybe 10 to 18, 20 people. I got an invitation years ago to teach at a nutrition conference, and that was like being a rock star. I'd have a headset microphone on. There'd be like 100, 120 people in the room that I'd never met before, right? So how am I going to, in 45 minutes, teach this big room full of strangers something that will be interesting, will meet them, and will keep everybody safe? Because I don't know what special situations they've got on. And I love that, right? Like rising to that moment of, all right, what do we do here? So those have been really fun. And then launching into, the pandemic made the move online a necessity for so many of us all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of fun with teaching online workshops and just playing with the technology. Well, what concepts can I even more effectively communicate in slides with photos and just a few words, even more effectively than I could do if I was in the same room, right? Because I can direct everyone's attention to a very clear sequence of visuals. So that's been super satisfying. What I'm looking at doing now is opening up a membership online and trying to figure out the logistics of a mix of recordings so that people can get in across multiple time zones and with varying schedules, but also live classes, because a lot of folks aren't going to watch recordings, and also some community building so that people feel like, oh, I belong to a community of people who are exploring. And because I'd love to get away from that, oh, I'm broken and need to go to an expert. No, we've all got something. And what if you come be part of a community of people who are exploring and cheering each other on and sharing what their experiences are? So it's how can I create something that meets people and uses the technology and is flexible enough to meet a variety of people's needs, both for their physical challenges and also for their inclination of how to connect.
Yeah. I have to say, as someone who's been in your workshops as well, they're just like, it's so amazing. Like they're so like interactive, and like you're given things to do and you're doing the exercises in the actual workshop. It's not just like watching slides. Like, I mean, yes, we watch slides, but then also we get to stand up, we get to do the movements during the workshop. And I don't know, I find that so engaging and just also so powerful. God, I have two words. They're amazing and powerful. I use them over and over again. But yeah, it just is, and especially because I love how you give these things to do where it's like, oh, you can do this sitting, like you don't have to do standing if back pain precludes you from standing or other things. And it's like, here's, you can do it sitting, you can do it lying down, and you give those variations as well. And it's just, I think, so powerful for dealing with those things like neck pain and hip pain and back pain and things, especially for those of us who spend hours and hours at computers and things like that. So I went off topic, but I got excited.
No, but can we do a little bit now that's just practical? Because like you say, people are sitting at computers for hours.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I'm a musician, and this actually is another, I'll just interrupt myself with another story and then share something practical. I studied I moved to Taipei, and I taught English and played music on street corners. And then the next year I moved to Shanghai in mainland China and studied at the music conservatory there. And then I came back. This was so long ago. It was 1990 to 92. So, we didn't have cell phones or subways in mainland China. We had bicycles and paper maps and wind-up alarm clocks. It was a different moment in history. But when I came back to the States, I did a lot of performing and a lot of traveling. And then when I got into yoga and being a movement teacher, I played the music less and less. And finally, I was focused on this and I'm not taking the instruments out. Recently, I joined a Tai Chi class that's all in Chinese because it's for the local Chinese community. And I was introducing myself to one of the other students, and I told her, and I kind of was wondering at the time, why am I even talking about the music school in Shanghai? Because I don't play anymore, but that was part of the story. And the next week, she said, I spoke to the director of the local orchestra, and he's very interested. He wants you to call him. So that was on a Tuesday. I had lunch with him on Friday, and I'm now a member of the local traditional Chinese orchestra, the Traditional Chinese Orchestra of Washington, D.C. And he gave me 2 pieces of sheet music and said the concert is in 3 weeks. So I had to all of a sudden get an instrument out of storage that I didn't even know what shape it was still in. And it took me a week to get it tuned up. And now I've had
everything.
I had to get the rust off the strings, dust off the soundboard, get it tuned up. And now I've had a week and a half to practice, and I still have a couple more days because the concert will be this Saturday, which, you know what, I love, because it's, again, a lot like, well, all right then, and we'll see how it goes. And I just love that they had that confidence in me on just meeting me. Okay, the concert is in 3 weeks, instead of, well, we'll come and see and maybe a couple months from now. But no. And when I mentioned to that classmate in Tai Chi class about, well, but I haven't played in so long, she said, no problem, it'll all come back to you. And then the next week I saw her and she said, how many hours each day are you practicing? And I was like, yeah, that is the way it comes back. So I'm in the midst of that right now. And what I want to say is that the body, I think of it a lot like a string instrument. And if you've got some strings too short and some too long, then the instrument is out of tune and nothing that you play on it will sound good. And it doesn't matter how hard you try, how much you practice. Out of tune is out of tune. You don't need a new instrument. You don't need a new teacher. You just need to tune your instrument. So one way our bodies get out of tune is how we're using ourselves during the day. And if you spend a lot of time hunched over your computer, you're going to be short in the front of the shoulders and long in the back. Well, then you go out to walk or to play catch or even just get a mug off the top shelf, and you're going to be much more vulnerable to injury. You're also going to be much more tired because this out of tune is going to give you kind of a collapse overall. Your legs will feel heavy. It's just a real drag. And it's very easy to reverse, and it doesn't have to be a lot of effort, right? So if you've been hunching and then you try to pull the shoulders back, now you're just basically putting tension on top of tension. If you have your arms, just let your arms hang down at your sides. You can rotate them so the palms of the hands face the wall behind you, and rotate so the palms of the hands face forward. And if you rotate palms of the hands behind you, I think what you'll find is that it really invites the shoulders to come forward. And so if you start typing from here, you're going to be in that whole collapse and head forward and everything's a mess. If you rotate the other way, palms forward, I think you'll find that your shoulders move back and you're more upright overall. You come out of the collapse. And so taking just a moment before you start work, rotate the arms, palms forward, bend at the elbows, and then just turn over from the elbows to bring your hands to the keyboard. You can do that before any activity, washing your dishes. If I have a sewing circle that meets every week, so I've got knitters and quilters, all sorts in there. And they say it's just been a big lifesaver if they simply rotate the upper arms a little bit before they start work. They're much more upright and open here. Now you're going to be using your shoulder in a much more in tune way, right? You'll be more proper length in the front and the back of the shoulder, and things will work better.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so amazing. And yeah, for anybody listening, you might want to check this out on YouTube, this little section, so you can actually see, because Paula stood back and actually demonstrated how she moved and the way the hands were and stuff. So yeah, oh, that's amazing. And as always, I end up adjusting myself and trying to sit up straighter.
But this way of getting yourself into sitting up straighter, right? It's not tension. It's not you correcting yourself. It's you making a gesture with your arms that's perfectly easy to do. You can rotate your arms easily, and you rotate. It's a little bit like knocking over a domino, right? When you rotate the arms so the palms face behind you, you knock the dominoes over in a direction of everything sort of collapsing. And when you go the other way, you start a line of dominoes falling down in a way of being more upright, being more light, being able to breathe more easily, having more range of motion for your neck. So you're less likely to get into neck tension headaches. And that's what I aim to do a lot, is give people things that are very easy to integrate into their daily life. I had a client recently who actually is from the Ukraine, and well before the troubles, she'd had back spasms and had gone in and seen some really top level sports doctors, and they'd given her a lot of exercises, and she'd gone in and worked with them. But she took one of my workshops and said, oh, nobody ever told me these things about how to set up my office or how to arrange my body when I'm working every day. And that's one of the things that I'm really looking to do a lot is, yeah, I can teach an hour lesson very easily and give you a lot of stuff, but I also want to give you things that you can integrate in while you're washing your dishes, or while you're sitting watching TV, or while you're walking your dog, because that's where you really spend your life. So instead of an hour exercise and then go do things, well, what if you just upgrade your daily habits a little bit at a time? Even if you don't have the energy to go to the gym, right? Like you mentioned at the beginning. Okay, but you could be using yourself a little more harmoniously throughout the day. So you don't have to aggravate your joints unnecessarily, and you don't have to require yourself to use more effort just to get through getting up and showered and dressed, right? Who needs to be exhausted after that much? So getting some better habits in will let you move a little more easily, more harmoniously, and then you have a little more stamina for things that you'd like to do.
Oh, yeah, having more stamina for the things that you'd like to do, and not having to find an hour to go to the gym, especially if your body can't handle that at this point too. So powerful. I love the work that you're doing and who you're helping and that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, okay, so even though I haven't specifically said, hey, this was brave or that kind of thing, like you've shared a lot of your bravery stuff, like moving to another country. Yeah, even the bravery of like reconnecting with your music and like playing in an orchestra, like that takes bravery to dive into that. And I love all the stories that you've shared. They all demonstrate that love of the swing, the back and the forth, and then the jumping off. And I think, like, as you said that story too, it really made me feel that how you show up on your workshops and things like that. It's just, it really is with that energy too. It's like, okay, let's do this, but it's like fun and exciting too. So yeah,
Well, and
thank you.
I much prefer teaching live to recording things because, well, who's going to be there and what will they need that day? And so a lot of my weekly classes, I run, there are chunks of the class that I've prepared in advance and I know it's going to happen, but I also love to run them a bit like an improv. I asked people at the beginning, are there any body parts that need attention today? Any functions? And then I look at putting together on the spot something that will meet those people in that moment. What do they really need today? And so I love to have that, well, let me show up and be of service to you right now, not inflict on you the good idea that I had last week when I was planning, right? Like let's create this shared space together and let me be available for whatever the group needs now.
Yeah. I love that. And I have a similar thing when it comes to helping people with marketing and their business and things like that too. I like much prefer that whole being able to respond to what people need. And it's like, oh, here's what's going to help you now versus, that thing that I thought was going to help you. Like, I mean, I might have that as a backup option if they don't know what they need. And I love that.
Well, and that was my experience when I worked with you as when I was the client of yours last year, was that you were very good about meeting me. What next steps make sense for me, given who I am and where I was with my business? Not, oh, well, then the next thing is but where, and really helping me talk through from your own experience. Well, what goes on a landing page to speak to people in chronic pain, and not from my perspective, but from the perspective of, what are they looking for right now? What's top of mind for them? So I thought you were very good about let's find a next good step for you to take from where you are now for who you are now.
Oh wow, thank you. I appreciate that feedback too. And it's quite funny, like the people I work with, I'm often also like very close to their ideal client, as well as being kind of their coach or their marketing consultant and that kind of thing. It's just so it's always kind of, I mean, not that I can't step into the shoes of other ideal clients, but definitely that seems to be just the way the universe sort of brings it about, if that makes sense. If that's not too woo for you, it's just like, it's how that aligns. So
it's being the right person in the right place at the right time, and really kind of stepping in and owning that. There's a reason for you to be working with them, and there's a reason that you're a good coach for them at that time, for who they are, for who they work with.
Awesome. Okay, so then you've talked a little bit about sort of some brave things that you're kind of doing, like the stuff that you're working on now, and then some things about your past and how you kind of started your business. What kind of things do you have coming up? What are your plans for the next few months in terms of your business and brave things you're going to do, other than playing in the orchestra, which you're going to be doing this weekend?
Top of mind for the last couple of weeks. So I would actually like to, I don't know that this strikes anybody as particularly brave, but I would like to start doing some blog posts just so that I get some articles out, because the whole invitation even to be in the Tai Chi group happened because I was sitting at a park doing some writing homework I actually was sitting at a park doing some writing homework for a video storytelling class. And I was writing about what arc I'd like my life story to take. What would I like for the next chapter? And I said, well, I'd like to be part of some groups of people where I feel like I really belong, where I'm welcome and wanted. And a group of Chinese people with beautiful posture and carriage came over to take pictures of each other in front of the tree next to my bench. So I started talking to them, and one of them is the Tai Chi instructor. And he said, well, why don't you come to our classes? The second class was the conversation about the conservatory. The third class was, well, why don't you go join the orchestra? So, that all happened just from a writing activity. and a lot of years of study of Mandarin and previously music. So I'm very interested to see where this will go. The orchestra director would like me to start teaching some movement classes to some of the Chinese community groups that he has. So that's
Awesome.
going to be one of my directions is, can I be effective teaching my skill set in a second language?
Yeah.
So that's one direction where things are going. And I'm also interested though in getting some of this written out in a series of articles where people could actually read them in chronological order if they choose, instead of the little random snippets that you get online. And with the video storytelling coach, I've been working for the last 3 years and putting together some short pieces that are now starting to come together. She'd like to see me doing a one-person show. And so that is another big, wow, how much of my personal life do I put into a presentation form for people to see? And that's different than the work that I'm doing with clients, but it's also very much me being out in the world and visible. And what I see in my own experience now and with the people that I'm working with in the orchestra is, this is what I would like my clients to have as the transformation. The end result of working with me is not just, oh, I wake up without pain, but somebody says, why don't you join the orchestra? And you say, yeah, why not? You don't say, oh, my back, my shoulders, I'd be too tired, right? You say, yeah. So I feel very much like, oh, I'm right in that. The end result of me doing this kind of work is that when an adventure presents, then I swing and jump off.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a good point too, actually, because I mean, I'm kind of in a similar phase to you as well, in that, I'm able to do more things and say yes to more things because I've got my chronic pain and things managed and under control, or if that's not even the right words for it, but you know what I mean? It's not front of mind. Like, it's just when you said that, I just remembered, like, for so many years, it was like, oh, hey, do you want to come along with us to this thing? And it'd be a case of, I think so, tentatively, yes, but maybe not. And even my husband, he has chronic pain and he doesn't feel like he can commit to anything because, other than work, because work pays the bills, like, and even that is something he's got to get through. And just that ability to have this, life, the richer life and more relationships and just connect with other people around things that just aren't just business, and yet it kind of all is business in life. I mean, how do you feel now from your perspective that you're doing all of these things? I know you kind of told us before, but tell me again, how amazing does it feel being on that side of things?
It just feels fabulous. And it's also, I haven't played in 20 years. And I have just a few weeks to be ready. So the first week was about tuning, right? Because I can't even tell if I'm hitting the right note if it's out of tune. And then I just was gently kind of going through, finding some of the patterns again and finding my way in the music. And I noticed a bad habit emerging that my teacher had called me out on 30 years ago. And it's about how it's a percussion instrument that I'm playing. It's about how I'm holding the mallet, and my index finger is drifting away from my middle finger. Well, I could take a couple weeks now and try to root out that habit, but then I wouldn't be practicing for the concert. So now I get my hand in the right position and I tape my fingers together so that this would be like a constraint in the Feldenkrais method. Well, the constraint now, Moshe Feldenkrais would call that a parasitic movement, right? Some muscle is tensing up to pull the finger away where it doesn't belong. So I'm just taping them together, and now I'm able to move my hand, and that habit is not able to express itself. And I noticed there's a difference in the tone, so my teacher's right. And also when I was not taping my fingers together and the habit was coming up, I could feel tension in my hand and my arm in weird ways afterwards. And I was like, okay, I'm not doing any more of this, right? So I'm just making sure that I can't do the bad habit. And then we got a piece of new sheet music. So initially I would send 2 pieces, and then I practiced one of them a lot. And then they said, oh, we're not doing that one anymore. Now we're doing this one. I was like, oh, surprise. And parts of it are very, very fast. And I've just looked at it and said, oh, there's no way I can have this up to speed in time. So I'm just going through and choosing, what are the notes on the downbeats? What could I reliably hit cleanly, right? Which is like me finding a variation that will work for me in the time that I have to recover my skills and be concert ready. What can I do that would be a contribution to the orchestra and not just a mess of, well, I really tried and I hit every wrong note in the region, right? So how do I need to, kind of reshape the sheet music that I'm given that works for me and works for the orchestra? How can, with my current ability level, how can I actually contribute? And then pulling out my wind-up metronome. It's amazing that it's new tools we have, right? Like I still have my wind-up metronome and it still works, but also now I have a metronome and a tuner app on my smartphone. Who knew that was coming? So just giving myself some real patience at, oh, okay, so let's start working with these to get them clean in the timing. And now let's start working on getting them up to speed. And now let's start working on the parts that are troublesome. And just having some confidence that I will be ready, even though a couple of weeks ago that, if you didn't know, you might not have had confidence in me. But I could see even from the beginning, oh, right, the foundations are still there, right? Like the foundation skills are there and I can build on this. So it's been a very interesting process for me getting ready in a hurry for a performance of, well, how can I be patient with myself? How can I build on what I have? How can I work with, things like bad habit surfacing, surprises, like changes in the music? How do I, with as little stress, with as little emotional distress, how do I just calmly prepare for this? And that's actually been a really nice seeing, oh yeah, all those skills I've been training and cultivating over the years apply directly to here, which is also giving me some more confidence about, oh, taking on some business jumps because, well, the foundations are good. My training is good. My connection with students and clients is good. And so then these marketing pieces that I need, the structuring offers that I need, all that are things that I can be learning that will help take me to another level. And I just am going to work at it patiently in the small steps that it will take for me to kind of get the swing ready to launch me.
Oh man, that's so amazing. And I love what you said about how do I calmly prepare for this? And at least like in the way you're talking about it too, it's like you're not beating yourself up about, what you haven't done, all the practice that you haven't done and things like that. It's just here's my constraint of I have this many weeks to compare. Like, look at how you've trained me. Here's my constraint of the time I have to prepare, and then how can I do this? And I just noticed that is how you approach things with the people who you work with. And I think that's all something that we can take from this podcast too, is just being that little bit kinder to ourselves in terms of, how can I calmly prepare for this and, really just focus on what I'm doing well and move forward in that way. I think that's so powerful.
Well, and that's been one of the big takeaways for me from the Feldenkrais training, really, is to not have an emotional reaction to constraints. Okay, what can I do with this constraint? Within the context of this constraint, what options do I have? One of the beautiful things I didn't mention before when you asked about the Feldenkrais method is it's such a great medium for cultivating free will. I think that more than anything, someone asked Moshe once in a lecture, what's the essential feature of being human? And he said, free will. We are the beings who get to make choices. And so wherever you are with your business or with your health issues or anything, I think to be looking for, well, what options, what choices do I have even within this set of constraints? Because that helps you have a sense of agency and empowerment, and then you are more able to make choices. So if you look at the constraints, all the things you can't do, okay, but what are you able to do within that context? And the more you start looking creatively at what am I able to do within that context, the more kind of freedom and ability you have to move around within that, and more things become possible.
Oof. Oh, I love that. Yes, exactly. That looking creatively and more things become possible. Okay, so I have one sort of like my second last question that I kind of ask everybody, and that is for anybody who's listening who wants to do something brave in their business or maybe around their health, because if they're listening to this, they're probably on that wavelength as well, or for their chronic pain, that kind of thing, but they're just sort of like stuck. They're kind of not able to take action yet. They're kind of in that sort of freeze mode. What would you suggest? What would be, I don't know, advice is a hard word, but you know what I mean? Like what would you say to that person who's in that thing and they're struggling to get started, or now's not the right time for whatever reason, X, Y, and Z?
I think one thing is to look at sort of what assets, what abilities, what options you already have, because that's going to be your foundation that you're going to build on, right? So like for me, getting ready for this concert, okay, first thing was to see, yes, I do have an instrument that's still intact, and find out whether or not it's tunable, but then also to see, oh yes, I remember, like I was well trained, and I have pieces here I can build on. And so for you to take a look at, I am good in my field, or I'm good at teaching, or, you know, really begin to identify what are the things that you do well, because that will help give you some confidence for why you could even move forward in this in the first place. And that was one of the things I loved about swinging and jumping, was just, you know, the confidence in my body. Look, I can propel myself through space, and I'm sturdy. I can handle the moment of impact. That was tremendously satisfying. So for you to find, well, what things in yourself do you have that you can rely on? And also to begin to look at, where could you use some help? What information do you need that someone else could provide? What perspectives would you like, so that you can be collaborating, creating a shared space? And that could be with a coach, it could be with colleagues. I love getting on co-working calls and being in conversation with other people who are also solopreneurs who are building businesses, because there's such rich conversations, and even just sharing frustrations or small wins with someone who gets it, right? Then I feel like, oh, I'm in my community, right? So I like to create a community of people who are learning how to move in healthier ways. And in my business, I like being in a community of people who are figuring out how to grow a solopreneur style business. So, you know, what do you have that you can count on? Who else do you know, or who else can you bring into your circle that can give you perspectives, give you information, and begin to map out, well, if I'm going to do something else, what pieces will need to be in place to make that? And some of those steps might be really small, right? And some of those might be, you know, like me taping my fingers. What do I need to make myself do so that the next thing will work? And I certainly have, you know, the areas in my business where things flow, and then the areas that I put off and realize, well, nothing will happen until this gets done. So that's what's happening today. So there will be that too, right? Identifying what comes easily to you, and what are you going to need to put on the list, even if it's not fun, or get help with, because maybe getting some outside support will help you move forward with it.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much for your amazing inspiration today, your perspective. That was the word I was looking for but couldn't find in the moment. Your perspective on all of these things that we've discussed. This has been amazing, and definitely got me excited for the day ahead. For those listening, I record these like very early in the morning, because that's when it crosses over with the US, and yeah, it's just amazing. So thank you so much for all of your time. one last thing for, like, we'll of course have links to all of your stuff in the show notes. However, for those people who are usually like me and it's like, oh, I just want to go Google it now or go search it now, where can people connect with you? Where's the best way to find you?
So I have a website, artofmovingwell.com, and I'm offering workshops on the order of every month or two. And so the art of moving, sorry, there's not a the in there, artofmovingwell.com/workshops will help you find out what's the next workshop that's on offer. And then what will be in the show notes is a little bit longer link for a free sampler. And that is 5 3-minute lessons that give you something that will help reduce neck and shoulder tension. So it's called Pain-Free Neck Week. Every day for a week, you'll get an email with a link, and the videos are very short, 3 minutes, and each one gives you one practical tip of something you can do during your daily activities that will reduce neck and shoulder tension.
Oh, wow, that is amazing. And yeah, I know so many, I want to send that to my husband because he just needs it.
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as well, and I have a free group. I have 2 free groups on Facebook. One called Vibrant Living with Paula James, and we have some nice lively conversations in there. And then I have a group called Create with Comfort, and which is looking at helping people, especially who are fiber artists, but quilters, knitters, potters, anybody that's painting, doing creative things with their hands. And we have a sewing circle that meets over Zoom once a week, where we have ranging conversations. People get to show and tell what they're working on or what they finished, and we talk about all sorts of stuff with other people who like to create. So those are places where you can connect with me as well.
Awesome. Oh, that is amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. And yes, this has been an amazing conversation. And definitely for anybody listening, if you have chronic pain or you spend a lot of hours working at your desk and you want to help manage some things or, keep things strong, definitely go and check out Paula. I thoroughly recommend her for sure. So thank you
so much, Tiff.
Thank you.
Pleasure to speak with you. Awesome. And I look forward to meeting more of the people in your audience.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Business Bravery podcast. Has this episode inspired you to do something brave? Even if it's only send a difficult email, please share it with me on Instagram or other social media channels. Feel free to tag me at Tiffany G Studios. That's TIFFANY. G for golf, STUDIOS, no spaces, no underscores, etc. Or you can use the hashtag Business Bravery Podcast so that I can cheer you on, and together we can inspire other coaches and course creators to do brave things in their business and life. Now, I'm Tiffany, and I'll leave you with this one last thing. What's one brave thing you're going to do today? It doesn't have to be big. Even the smallest steps can create the most massive results. So again, feel free to share it with me either publicly or privately so that I can cheer you on. That's it from me. Until next time, bye for now.